Ridley Scott's Napoleon was released this week, and in this episode, we're going to give you a full review and breakdown from my perspective after seeing it in IMAX here in Bangkok, Thailand. What did I think of the movie? What did I think of the controversy regarding the movie, regarding historical inaccuracies? What do I think of the pros, the cons, the setting? What was going on in it? Is it just a big tale about battles? Is it about simping? I'll break down all of that for you today on this Mindset movie review. Of course, this is the Legal Mindset where we teach you to be your own judge. And I am, of course, your host, Andrew Esquire, American attorney and occasional moviegoer. And look, in a land where we're going to have Denzel playing Hannibal and we have Rachel Zegler swapping into Snow White, it's good to see a movie that doesn't do any crazy, massive swaps where they were having a movie where Napoleon is a transgender Ugandan queen. So when I first saw this movie, I said, okay, well, look, on its face, I can't see anything that is glaringly woke, that is glaringly crazy. So I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to go and check this out. And to be fair, I hadn't heard too much about this movie other than seeing a couple previews for it in other movies when I went to go see them, like Oppenheimer. During that movie, I did see a preview for Napoleon. So when it finally came out, I was actually taken by surprise. I didn't know the release date. And in fact, it wasn't until somebody else mentioned it that I said, oh yeah, well, I guess that's out. I guess I'll check that movie out. Now, immediately when I looked at what people were saying online, I saw that some people were saying, oh, well, it's got historical inaccuracies. It's got things that are not right. And well, that used to bother me a whole lot. I used to be, when I was a very young person, very, very focused on what is correct versus not correct. I wanted to see every little last detail exactly right. I wanted it to be true exactly to how it happened in real life. But as I grew up into an adult and a person particularly who understands business, I know that, well, things can't always be done 100% accurate to fact. Sometimes you need to do a little bit of creative license. You need to have a little bit of minor embellishment in order to tell a story or get something done. And certainly history, certainly decades of history, cannot be condensed into 2 hours. It is impossible to accurately, down to the minute detail, condense history into 2 or even 3 or 4 hours. It's just not enough time. The problem with Napoleon, and one of my overall theses with Napoleon, is it doesn't have enough time and it doesn't seem to do any one thing in an outstanding manner. So let's talk about the movie. Obviously, it's Napoleon, so it's the perspective of Napoleon Bonaparte, and it starts with the beheading of Marie Antoinette. Now, this is one of the areas where the historical inaccuracy folks came out and ran out and said, well, Marie Antoinette, she has long hair in the movie, and well, in reality, her hair was short by then. She cut her hair short. This is the type of thing that I call the nitpicking historian. Okay, I get it, buddy. I get you know all about history. I get you know exactly the length of her hair, her toenails, what she had for breakfast that day, her bowel movement. I know you know that. I know you as a historian know that. I get it. I respect that. But in a movie, I don't need that detail. The important thing to me about history, particularly historical fiction, which is most movies are not entirely accurate. They're not put as a documentary or a specific historical biopic that's going with all the exact details. They're a fiction. They're taking liberties, taking creative liberties. In this, with historical fiction, I'm going to look at movies like Gladiator or Kingdom of Heaven, which have historical things going on. Obviously, for example, in Gladiator, there were gladiators, there was Rome, there were generals, there were legionaries, right? There were animals released into the Colosseum, but did things go down exactly like the plot of Gladiator? No. However, after Gladiator, was there more interest in Rome? Did people learn about the actual history of Rome, the actual things going on? Yes, same thing with Kingdom of Heaven. They learned the actual history of the Crusades, not what was said in the movies. And my thought with Napoleon, the movie, and those minor inaccuracies like the Marie Antoinette's hair, I think those things are things that you would just look up. If you're really interested in this, you love this time period, you're going to go look that up. You're going to say, oh, let me look up Marie Antoinette. Let me learn more about the guillotine. Let me learn more about the Reign of Terror. Let me learn more about Robespierre. All of these people could be focused in on. You could actually narrow in on and go into that. But that's not the place for the movie, and I don't knock them for that. Now, where I do knock them is not fully fleshing out one of the two main themes of the movie. So what are the two main themes I saw in the movie? Well, the first is the rise of Napoleon militarily, and the second, and perhaps more important, is his relationship with Josephine, the Empress of France, well, for a short period of time before their divorce. Spoilers, it's history, so not really spoiling anything, but it's going into that personal relationship. But in this is where I see the movie failing, because neither does it do the battle side fully correctly, nor the relationship side. And I'll start with a little bit of pros just to give a little bit of positive before I get into the cons. So things I did like about the movie, things that I thought were good were, well, some of the filming techniques were very good. Some of the scenes were very good. I think the parlors where the French were playing cards, right? They're going in, they're playing music. You really felt in that moment immersed. And I was in an IMAX theater and it really did feel immersive to be in that. It also, at certain points, selective points during the battle, you felt very, very immersed. You felt like you were on a little bit of an edge, just like they would be at that moment. In fact, I think the initial battle, the Battle of Toulon, where Napoleon is taking back a fort that was captured by the British, taking it back to French control, that scene, you could feel the anxiety as he's about to launch his attack. He wants this thing to work. It's his whole career. This is make or break for Napoleon. If he fails, then he's not going to climb the ranks. He will never become emperor. So you can feel that tension in that scene. The problem is that there's no follow-up, and this is moving quickly into the cons for the movie. These scenes, which can build up, never are fully satisfying, and that applies both for battles and for romance. In the battle categories, in the battles they do show, there's obviously Toulon, there's Austerlitz, there's Borodino, and there's Moscow and Waterloo. They totally skipped the Battle of Leipzig, as well as most of the Italian campaigns, several other campaigns as well, and smaller battles and skirmishes. They also cover Egypt as well, but do not deal with much of the back and forth battles between England and France over Egypt. They don't deal with that. And that's a lot that's left out because there's a lot in those battles that people want to see. So the battle historian, the military historian, is really unsatisfied. And furthermore, they don't get into the tactics, the real thought behind the tactics that Napoleon used. During the Battle of Austerlitz that they show, which is probably the most detailed battle, is the only time you see, okay, well, Napoleon's luring them in, he's pincer attacking them on both sides, he's, using artillery strategically, he's using the geography of the frozen lake strategically. So, he's clearly a very, very clever commander. He's clearly a very competent commander. That's the only time you see that. You should be seeing that more throughout the course of the movie, but instead it actually showed Napoleon in many cases as not being entirely confident and having some kind of weaknesses in confidence throughout the engagements, which may try to paint more of a personal story, and I think Joaquin Phoenix does, for what's worth, the good job acting. He does a good job personally acting out that character. However, they didn't give him enough to work with. Now let's flip that over to Josephine, the relationship with Josephine. Well, this is obviously a complicated relationship. This is a relationship in which this is a single mom. Guys out there, wifing up single moms. I think we know what to say about that one. But her husband was killed during the French Revolution. Napoleon sees her at a party, sees her, look at a party, gets infatuated with her, and eventually ends up marrying her. Now, this is a long series which is played out of the back and forth between them, where they both have affairs, although only the affair of Josephine is showed. The affairs of Napoleon are off screen. We don't see those, but he does talk about them. Josephine asks them, says, well, haven't you had affairs? And he goes, well, yeah, but they serve their purpose. I didn't love them, and was explaining that verbally, but we didn't see that. And in fact, historically, that's a big thing. In fact, there was a Egyptian Cleopatra, essentially Napoleon's Cleopatra. That was a very famous affair of Napoleon. There was also a very famous incident where the British Navy captured the letter after Napoleon finds out that Josephine is cheating, where they capture the letter and they end up publishing that, but that's not put out there. There's also many other really critical events and things that would have been really cool to put in a movie, which they completely cut out. For example, I know historically, because this is something I've known about, I must like history a lot. I like that period of time, the French Revolution and the Bonaparte era. I find them very fascinating eras. So I knew there was a very famous incident where Napoleon and Josephine were, while they were married, going to the opera, and somebody wanted to kill Napoleon. So they planted a bomb. And well, because Josephine delayed going there, she wanted to fix something, or fix her shawl up so she looked just right. Well, they delayed, so the bomb went off a little bit late, and instead of getting Napoleon, it actually got the horses in front of Josephine's carriage. It got some bystanders, killed them, and also threw some glass through Josephine's daughter's hand. So she kind of injured her hand. But despite that, they still went to the opera the same day. They continued on to the opera on the same day. That's a very interesting story. And that would have been a cool movie event where like there's a bomb and it goes off and almost gets them both. I don't know why that was left out. It would have painted much more of an intimate bonded experience between Napoleon and Josephine as kind of in this together, as sharing the risk, as kind of growing together. Because it's well known that in the beginning, Napoleon was kind of simping for Josephine. He was way more into her than she was into him, but it develops over time. And over time, it appears that historically, Josephine was indeed fond of Napoleon. Over time, over years. And in fact, even towards the end of her life, which they don't accurately show, she was asking Tsar Alexander, the Tsar of the Russians, for permission to go live in exile with Napoleon because she wanted to be there with Napoleon. And in fact, it would have been an interesting question of history whether Napoleon would ever have returned from Elba if Josephine was there with him. If she was there with him the entire time, maybe, just maybe, he would have never come back. He would have said, nope, I'm staying. But they left these things out. They left these important details out of their relationship, which it matters a lot. They also really underplay some characters, which I think are absolutely fascinating in French history, and you could put into a movie easily and play up their part. For example, Talleyrand. Now, I know what you're saying. Talleyrand's in the movie, yes. But his cleverness, his kind of manipulations, his switching sides, that's not shown as prominently as it could be. They could have played that up a little bit more in the interpersonal drama related to the Bonaparte era. That's something you didn't see because Ridley Scott wanted to split the baby. He wanted to show a little bit of battles, a little bit of relationship. And once again, neither one were satisfying. Now, there were some really cool scenes, some really cool shots. I think the shot of Napoleon coming into Moscow as it's abandoned, sitting on the throne, which is covered in bird shit, and then walking out during the night to see the entirety of Moscow in flames. This is actually a really, really, really cool scene. I really like that scene, but once again, it's selective. It's one little piece that was good, whereas they could have played out way, way more. They also could have played up if they were going on the battle route. Characters like Marshal Ney. Now, I think there was a character that was supposed to be a stand-in for Marshal Ney, I think, but they never really introduced him. They're not clear. It's not clear it is Ney. So that's another relationship that's really not there at all. So walking away from this, what do I think? Well, if I was going to rate it out of 10, right, I would rate it maybe a 5 or a 6. Now, look, I'm willing to give a lot of points for a movie not being woke, not being crazy, and not totally rewriting history. But at the same time, I have to admit, this was not something that was really engaging, either as a person who likes interpersonal relationships, who might want to study the relationship between Napoleon and Josephine. In fact, Robert Greene dedicated a big section of his book, Art of Seduction, to Josephine. But of course, that's not fully fulfilled, and neither is the military side. From a military history or even military entertainment standpoint, you're going to be disappointed because there's just not enough there for you to think about. You're not engaged with these campaigns the same way. The campaigns kind of play out as like an extension of the personal life, right? Or a reflection of his personal life. So the highs are high, like when things are good, they're good, right? He wins Austerlitz. He's having a great time with Josephine. The relationship is at the peak point, right? But it goes downhill from there. Things fall from there. It's a very, very interesting scenario. Now, I will say one thing. In terms of the portrayal of Joaquin Phoenix, of Napoleon, is he a little bit cucked? I have to address this point because, of course, it's my channel and it's something I have to point out. I think the way they portray it, it does appear so. He does appear to be kind of simp and strong in the beginning. He's coming on strong to her. He's totally infatuated with her. But at the same time, she's really not having it. You can see that with her lovemaking scenes where she's not even really paying attention. She's kind of like, okay, are you done yet? And then going on from that, when you see the affairs, they only show her and the young Hussar, Mr. Charles, right? Who is the one who she ends up cheating with. Now, they don't show Napoleon's affairs. They don't show his mistresses. So if they kind of show both of them as mutually cheating, I think it would have portrayed him as less of a cuckold. But indeed, when he picks up a paper in the carriage when he's coming back to France, he actually is called a cuckold in the actual newspaper. So this is something that could be put out there in a more equally distributed way, even if you still had the newspaper headlines, because of course it was a newspaper headline, but it could have gone both ways, right? News of Napoleon's mistress getting back to Josephine, news of Josephine getting back to Napoleon. Now, I want to know what you guys think. Are you going to see Napoleon? Are you interested in seeing it? What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think it's an amazing movie? Do you think it's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10? Or do you think it's a 1 out of 10? Let me know, and let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you next time. Peace.